my name is Fran Watson, and we'd like to welcome you to our broadcast on public affairs, public access at the Houston MediaSource. Right now, we are in the midst of a time where women are at the forefront of conversations. From Hollywood to the NFL, all the way to the campaign trail. Right here in Texas, we have two women, Senators Wendy Davis and Leticia Vanderpue, who are running for the top two spots to run the state of Texas. So we thought that it would be just fitting that tonight we would talk about feminism. So we'll have a discussion, a panel discussion, featuring people who are in the feminist movement, who are new to the feminist movement, and who just believe that this is a movement that should stay around. So we'll be talking about what feminism is, the misconceptions of feminism, and also the argument that's out there that there is no longer a need for feminism because we are living in a post-feminism era. So we're excited about having a great discussion, and we'd also like you to be a part of that discussion. So please call in with comments and questions at 713-807-1794. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. We have Michael Webb Jr., who is a community activist, and we have Kristin Anderson, who is a fellow for the Center of Critical Race Studies at U of H downtown. She is also the author of Modern Misogyny, Anti-Feminism in a Post-Feminist Era. We have Carliss Chatman, who is a board member at Planned Parenthood, Gulf Coast. And we have Laila, Khalili, who is the president of the Student Feminist Organization and the Texas Freedom Network Student Chapter at University of Houston main campus. So again, welcome to our panelists, and let's just go ahead and get started with a few questions. And this conversation is yours, it's with you, and then we invite again the audience, the viewers, to call in. So Kristin, let's start with you. I want to know, how would you, and really, we'll start with you, but I'd like everyone's input, but how would you define a feminist, or what does a feminist look like to you?
So feminism is, I use Bell Hook's definition of feminism, which is a movement to end sexism, sexist oppression, sexist exploitation of women. And another definition of feminism is that it's the recognition that gender inequality still exists today, and it also includes the imperative that something should be done about it. So not just, oh, there's inequality, that's too bad, but being a feminist to most women and men means also being an activist.
What about you, Carliss?
I would agree with that, but I view a feminist as something more broad. I think anyone that is for the equality of women and for the equal treatment of women, and anyone that is trying to advance that goal is a feminist, whether they know it or not. I mean, I think there are lots of people who will come out adamantly who, you know, go to work every day, who are climbing the corporate ladder, and will say, oh, I'm not a feminist, but in every action that they have every day, they're living feminism.
What else? Laila?
Yeah, I agree with both of their sentiments. And even to extend it more broadly, anyone who wants to advance any social justice goal that impacts women and their families and those in their lives. And I know recently in Houston, you know, one of the issues we were discussing on a local level was, you know, our equal rights ordinance. And so trying to explain to people, hey, you know, feminism includes trans women, it includes men, it includes the entire community. So it's not just about women.
Michael?
So I've always believed in I've always believed in the equality of the sexes. But I do have to agree with what I think was been generally discussed here, that it does require some sense of action towards achieving that equality. And so I think that's the key ingredient for being a feminist.
Well, sounds like that. So it's with all types of movements so with any movement that we see that there are issues and then we have to take steps to do that. What are some of the steps that you've seen or taken, or that you have all been taking in this movement? And that can go to anyone, whoever would want to start there.
Well, I think one kind of like injection of energy into the feminist movement has come through social media and the kind of rapid response to issues that come up. And I've seen so many brilliant feminist bloggers respond to, blaming rape victims for their victimization and slut shaming, and like responses with slut walks. And even, these videos that come out like 24 hours ago on street harassment, people are already responding and writing so eloquently about it. So I think social media should be credited. Now social media is also a place that's really unsafe for women as well. But I just see so many vibrant young feminists doing such brilliant work, just responding so quickly to issues that pop up.
So do you think with social media that there is a reawakening or reinvigoration of feminism, or do you think that it's just kind of enhanced, like there's just an enhancement to the movement?
Yeah, maybe it kind of it sort of morphs and changes it. I don't know. What do other people
I think it's easier for people to come out of the shadows as a feminist on social media. It's a lot easier to just react to a post, or you get inundated with information constantly, and it's easier to see things that are not positive and that you need to react to. And it's much easier to just comment on a post or write a blog than it is to go hold a sign at a protest.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's the entrance point for a lot of people. It makes it more accessible, and I think especially with social media is that it allows more people's voices to be heard and to be amplified, so we can understand many more perspectives than we would originally only see in our one community. So if it's just in Houston, or if it's in Texas in general, or if it's the West, or if we're looking at an issue that's affecting, women in another country, in another hemisphere. So we're getting to hear more voices.
Oh, that's good to know.
I think that's such a great point about how globalization interacts with social media, and how we can see movements in Canada, like Arab Spring, girls in education in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And so that's kind of now on all of our radar, or at least a little bit more than 10 years ago or so.
I know you can follow, I tell you, you follow so many of these different hashtags, like the Yes All Women. You say something, and you're hearing things from people in Canada, or you're hearing people from someone in Western Africa. It's just so amazing that you can have this worldwide dialogue. And so I think talking about this, so we know that we can kind of reach out. What are some of the issues that you are all finding that needs this feminist response, that requires some type of feminist response, or some movement for the response?
I think the war against women's rights and women's rights to make choices is at the forefront. Not just with abortion rights, but voting rights and equal pay, and just the idea that all the ways that women are not being treated equally to men, and how there seems to be this resurgence of a campaign against women having voices and against women expressing their rights in a country where we're supposed to be free. And, we see things happening here that you wouldn't think would happen in a third world country or in an uneducated country. But, here in America, it happens every day, almost every week you hear about some sort of right being taken away. So, I think that's probably the number one issue.
Yeah, that's been on platforms that we hear all the time. Even like I said early in the intro about our governor, the governor and lieutenant governor's platform. Women's issues, women's reproductive rights, things that have been kind of at the forefront. So any other issues? I know that Jon Stewart, we were just talking about that before the show, and the catcalling and all of those different videos.
Gamergate.
The Gamergate, yeah.
So the Nader Sarkeesian and the violence, or the threats against women specifically for speaking out about tropes of women in video games or in the media in general. So that's been also a very recent, not recent, but it's really at the forefront. I think if you go online, you look it up, it's one of the trending movements currently on Twitter.
And I think just the treatment of women who speak out, and women bloggers in particular, speaks to the need for a vibrant feminist movement. Because while men who are bloggers certainly can be criticized and they can be called names, women specifically get murder threats and rape threats just for just for being women, daring to be brave enough to speak out on these issues.
And to touch on that a little bit, I think for me, I debated about talking about this, but for me, what I've always struggled with and what I, from my early childhood, identified as an issue was violence and domestic violence, and witnessing that. And of course, I haven't experienced it, but I think as a child, you do experience it to some extent by witnessing it. And I'm happy to see that it's finally getting some type of traction and attention. But for a while, and especially in minority communities, domestic violence is not talked about. And it boils down to, from my perspective, and I could definitely be wrong, it boils down to, society or men having a sense of dominance over women. And that's not only inside of relationships, but that's also inside the workplace. That's inside, everyday conversations. We see women and we witness women being silenced and being sort of, I guess, in a not so creative way of saying it, being put in their place. And for me and from my experience, from my background, that's sort of the number one issue I've identified.
Well, it's interesting that we're bringing up these various issues, but it seems whenever I talk to some people, you hear feminists or you hear feminism, that it has this connotation of being just women kind of turning their backs on one sex, on, kind of piling on men or trying to keep other women away from men. And it seems like that would be a misconception. Are there misconceptions about feminism? Because we haven't discussed any of that here. I haven't heard that. I've heard issues that are kind of at the forefront that need to be discussed.
So it's interesting that Michael just brought up the issue of male entitlement and female bashing, right? But we don't even have that term in our culture. The only term like that we have is male bashing. So, that's just so interesting that one goal of feminism is to look at and examine domestic violence, but at the same time, feminists are seen as male bashers and man haters. And I think that's an interesting way to try to keep women who otherwise, as you said, support feminism from labeling themselves feminists.
Absolutely.
So it's a way it drives a wedge between women who call themselves feminists and women who won't or can't because they fear that label of male basher.
I want to say also that some of that is internalized sexism. So women being self-deprecating and not supporting themselves and what they do. Women who have been raised in the same society that men have been raised in our communities, and so they view men as being more dominant naturally in the higher order of things. That's how it works. And so I think that's where we get a lot of this women on women aggression and judgment and jealousy, and they're not supporting each other. And that's, if I can say one thing about feminism that has taught me, is the exact opposite of supporting women and being having a stronger bond with other women and elevating their voices and doing what I can to empower and help them, which is kind of the opposite of what I was raised to see women as. I saw them as competitors. I saw them as my opposition. I saw them, as catty or against me in some way, and they're not. And so that's also just a huge misconception. In a way, I think feminism helps women is to break down that barrier of pushing other women away.
So how are we able to get this message out? How are we able to kind of change the dialogue to say that this isn't about male bashing, this isn't about tearing down men or even this women on women aggression? It's really about creating a supportive network for the gender.
I think it starts with education in girls and just telling girls that they have equal opportunities and that there's no reason why they can't be smart and pretty, that you have to pick one or the other, and that it's okay to like boys and be a feminist and want to stand up for yourself, and just getting rid of those misconceptions at the very early level and at the educational level, and empowering girls to be whatever they want to be.
Yeah.
And I think it requires us to use the term feminist and not other terms like humanist, and I mean, which are perfectly reasonable and valid, but I think we cannot be afraid to call ourselves feminists, and embrace that, and because that's what we are. And if you believe that gender equality is important, that it's an issue, then you should call yourself that's just the label. You are a feminist.
And so, do you believe, or do you feel like enough people are standing up and calling themselves feminists?
Well, we have a lot of like celebrities now that call themselves feminists. We also have a lot of people who interview women celebrities and ask. It's almost like, one of those gotcha questions, like, are you a feminist or not? And then you catch women off guard saying they're not feminists. So it's kind of, people follow women celebrities around asking them if they're feminists, and they should follow men celebrities around as well, or ask people if they're anti-racist or for other social justice movements. But there are a lot of young women identifying as feminists, and I think that's really great.
So one of the things I know that in your book that one of the central things you do is analyze this notion that we are kind of living in this post-feminist era, and that there is no need for feminism. I mean, women are in positions of power, and so why are we still talking about feminism? And so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about or have a discussion about, is maybe talk a little bit about that, and then some responses. So do we believe that there is no longer need for feminism? I mean, the first 15 minutes, it seems like we're there. So I'm just, what drove you to write this or come to this or really talk about this argument?
Yeah. So post-feminism is the idea that women have more or less achieved equality in the United States and elsewhere, and that there's no longer a need for an actual feminist movement. But then a piece of that argument is also those women who continue to insist on feminist movement must want to go beyond equality, and they want to get ahead of men. And so that's where the kind of man-hating and male-bashing come in, that the playing field is level now, but feminists want to come and disrupt it. So that's the sort of premise of post-feminism. And of course, I and feminists, reject that, because we have all kinds of evidence for inequality. I mean, for instance, the United States ranks 47th in the world on UN indices of gender equality. I mean, that's amazing for a rich industrialized country. But we see the need for feminism everywhere. But again, post-feminism is sort of a way to silence feminists and to silence or prevent women and men from being activists for gender equality.
The idea that feminism is not needed anymore, I kind of chuckled when you asked that question, because it's absurd. Mm-hmm. The fact that all men are deciding women health care these days, it shows the need for feminism. And I'm usually a silent feminist. I was raised by all women or whatever, but lately seeing what's been happening with policy changes and things of that nature, it kind of pisses me off, because I feel like men are giving me a bad representation. And it shows the importance that more voices need to be part of that conversation, or more people need to start speaking up about feminism. So it's definitely needed. And I feel like we all should just be more loud, if anything.
I'm on board with that.
Right? Well, I wonder, kind of going through, your daily interactions, are there some issues that have kind of popped up in your lives that are making you, that cause concern for you, that, that shows that there is still this need for feminism and that movement to continue on?
Well, it's not my personal life, but it's something that I think is fitting. And and I hadn't really clicked for me until the last few months. But I was talking to a friend, and we were discussing, what's happening in Ferguson and what's been happening with police brutality, and we were talking about reproductive rights, and how if you are going to say that you support abortion access, if you support reproductive justice, you also have to be willing to pick up a sign and stand to protest against police brutality. And the argument is that, if you can't raise your kids in a safe environment, if you can't have your children in a safe environment, if you are going to be incarcerated for trying to stop an abusive partner from hurting you and your children, or if you are at risk, and if you live in a neighborhood where police don't protect you, if there is crime, or if they are the perpetrators of crime against your family, then you can't call yourself a feminist unless you're willing to work on those issues, because it is about gender equality, but it's also about so many more things, because it isn't just, I'm going to quote Audre Lorde here, but we don't lead single issue lives. So there is not a single issue that we can just talk about. So it's not just a sex or gender issue. And so that was really eye-opening to me to see how these two serious issues are related, reproductive rights and police brutality. And so I think in a lot of people's daily lives, this is something that comes up and it's not really talked about. But I don't, personally, I have not experienced this.
Well, I think Laila makes a really good point about how feminism intersects with other social movements, because fundamentally it's a social justice movement. So I think being a feminist and working against police brutality, the prison industrial complex is and should be at the center of feminism. And you see feminism intersecting with other present issues as well. For instance, like the movement of fast food workers for a living wage. Most fast food workers are women, and the average fast food worker is 28 years old. So that's certainly a feminist issue. The fact that the United States seems to be in perpetual war, that's a feminist issue too. And we have groups like Code Pink that are sort of at the intersection of the anti-war movement and feminism, and some of the more prominent members of the Dreamers, and people for immigration reform are feminists, and the Occupy movement and the Arab Spring. So it's a great time for feminism, because it is intersecting with so many of these other related issues.
One of the things that I had been reading about is, when you talk about the intersections, is how there's a complaint that feminism or feminist and race is an issue. So, for instance, when at the awards, the Video Music Awards, when Miley Cyrus was with dancing with, what's the singer's name?
Robin Thicke.
Robin Thicke. How could I forget that name? When dancing with Robin Thicke, there was an article that had come out the next day, and it was talking about how everyone was kind of rushing to Miley Cyrus's aid, but they didn't pay attention to the fact that, yes, Miley Cyrus was free, to be able to dance, but the black women that she had on stage were not covered. They were in these animal suits, and they were dancing. So it was, yes, we had feminists, the feminists were running to her aid, but what about the black women? And so they were just kind of like leaving race to the side. And so did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, definitely. I think a lot of times people, the online feminist movement, it's diverse, but unfortunately the majority of, I think, articles written online or viewed online or shared online are from Western countries, or they're from the US. And so it's going to be almost a predominantly white view, a white perspective on feminism. And so you're going to hear so many people rushing to, I also like Jennifer Lawrence's aid, or Miley Cyrus's aid. And so that's good. I think it's good that people are saying, hey, women should be able to be sexual beings. They should be able to, express themselves on stage and dance. But absolutely, they're ignoring white female singers and, celebrities objectifying black female bodies on stage, or appropriating dance moves that are considered vulgar when black women do it. But when white women do it, it's cool or hip or the new thing. It's the new fad. And so it's been completely ignored.
Now, I think it also reflects that we're just at different stages in feminism. I think I actually had this conversation with some friends in D.C. a couple of weeks ago. When you think about what the white feminist movement was about, getting women into the workplace, or getting equal education, or the right to leave your kids at home, black women were never at home. Black women have always worked. And Black women have always been sexualized and objectified. And so the idea of having sexual freedom or being able to go to work is not something that is necessarily what Black women aspire to. I remember when there was the arguments about Michelle Obama not being feminist because she chose to stay home. And, you know, all my Black friends were like, wait a minute, that's our dream, to be able to be wealthy enough to stay home and take care of your kids. That's not something that we've ever been able to do. And it's something that only in this generation are you able to be Black and middle class and have a single income family. And so that's feminist for us, but it's considered repressive. And so just getting some cultural understanding and recognizing that we don't all start at the same place. And so our goals are different.
And I think there is a real history of racism in the women's movement and homophobia. And I think white feminists have an obligation to put issues of race at the center, and issues of class and sexuality. That's what we have to do. That doesn't mean that the fact that feminism has this history and present that can be problematic, it doesn't mean we shouldn't be feminists. It means we have to be careful, and we have to be really conscious about putting, not ourselves at the center. I often talk with students about feminism and race, and a student came up to me today after class and said, I have some complaints about white feminists. And she listed these complaints, and they were really valid complaints. And she said, I'm not sure if I want to be a feminist. And I said, well, don't make that be a reason why you want to be a feminist, that you can critique, white feminists and some of the problems as part, that's in the movement, but that doesn't mean we aren't feminists, or we don't want to be feminists, or we shouldn't be feminists. But we have to be vigilant about social categories that we think are irrelevant to us and issues of privilege as feminists.
So to switch a little bit, and what is the role? Like, for me to say Michael is a feminist, a male feminist, is there something using the term male feminist? Is that a problem? Is there, if we talk about what is the male's role in feminism?
I saw this, it was like a meme or something. It was on Facebook a few years ago, and I thought it was interesting. And it had a quote, and I have no idea who said it or who it was credited to, but it was that men don't need a space in feminism. They need to take their space in society and make it feminist. And so I see that as, men can be feminists. It's not, I've had people ask me, men come to our feminist meetings at UH and ask, a man, can I be a feminist? Or is there an organization, or is there like a movement for men? Because it's called feminism. And so it's like, well, move past why it's called, like the term itself, the word feminist, and look at what it is. And yes, you can be a feminist if you agree with these things and you want to advance these goals, and you think that it's worth your time and worth your your effort. Then yes, you can be a feminist if you believe in this.
So do male feminists stand out in the movement?
I would just say I feel very uncomfortable speaking or being on a microphone on behalf of women, because I feel like I don't truly understand. I haven't taken it back. So oftentimes I hear white people say, I would never understand what it means to be Black, and so I have that same mentality when it comes to feminism. I would never understand what it means to be a woman, even though I'm gay, even though I'm slightly flamboyant. I have never experienced that struggle. However, I do have to agree that I do see my place now, more recently, of standing up for feminist values in areas where I am part of the dominant community, or being a male. I have that rare privilege of being part of those conversations where they don't say around women, when bosses, whether they recognize it or not, degrade their female bosses or their female employees, and I have that privilege of saying, oh, that's wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm just not getting to that comfort level, but I do think that's the primary role for male feminists. It's because we're in those spaces where the mentality can be truly changed.
And with that, we have a call. Caller, what's your question or comment?
Yes, good evening.
Good
My
evening.
comment is that we essentially have a version of feminism kind of on trial in our state as we look at our election. We have, on the Democratic side, obviously, two wonderful lady candidates, and we have just the opposite on the Republican side, and it almost appears as if feminism is on trial. And we also look at women's rights, and I'd really like to hear what the panel has to say about, well, wow, what's going on here? What about a woman's rights and how it stacks up, and the fact of how many attorney generals have we had that have been females making decisions about the rights of females? I think this would be a great time to discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you for calling.
Well, I definitely think feminism has been on trial since the last legislative session. I mean, I would almost say it's under attack. And I think, it's kind of that unspoken rule, the abortion Barbie comments about Wendy Davis, or the way that you see people talking about what she's wearing or what's her hair look like, or, they never say it about Greg Abbott. We can't even talk about Greg Abbott being in a wheelchair, but we can talk about what Wendy Davis has on. And so I think it's definitely a struggle. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I think things are changing, but, I just wonder if it were two male Democrats running, if it would be so close. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it would be, especially not with the issues.
And I think just the fact this was mentioned before, that so much legislation has to do with regulating women's bodies and women's sovereignty, and there's essentially no regulation of men's bodies. I mean, that's a feminist issue. Could I say something else about men and feminism,
Sure.
Fran? Thanks. So I think men are really crucial to the feminist movement, and I'm so glad that you said, I'm a man, so I don't know what it's like to be a woman, and I sometimes feel uncomfortable talking on behalf of women, but that doesn't stop you from saying stuff and from objecting to sexism. And I really appreciate that, because I think a lot of men and white people do this in terms of race, like, well, I'm not a person of color, so I'm just not going to weigh in on that. And I don't think that's the solution. So I really appreciate that. And I think men really serve a crucial role in being allies and being able to talk to other men in a way that women won't be heard sometimes. They can talk to men, whereas women might be dismissed as emotional, or you have an agenda. Men can serve a really important role in that regard.
And to also go off of that, the feminist movement it's for everybody, and I want to stress that. So for men, men experience sexism as well. Men experience this hyper masculine expectation from a very young age. They're inundated with this idea of who they have to be, and this is very harmful, and it leads to violence against women. It leads to violence against just people in the community. It leads to self-loathing and lots of problems along the line. And so when we talk about ending sexist oppression, it's not just for women, it's for men as well. It's for all people, all genders, all sexes. And so it benefits men just as much as it benefits women.
Mm-hmm. I think the women's rights issues benefit men just as much as women too. I mean, if women have the freedom to choose, if women have the freedom to decide what they want to do with their bodies, it influences families, it influences men, it influences the whole community. So all of the movements are about everyone. I think it's just getting rid of all the misconceptions and stereotypes, and making everyone know that the tent is broad and open. So
yeah, I read something really funny the other day regarding birth control, and it was, men benefit from birth control too. It's if they knew that you were going to have a baby, or you're going to get pregnant every time they had sex, mm-hmm. they would not be down with that. They would say, no, please, I want you to take birth control. I want you to do what you can, because I don't want to be a father right now in this relationship. So I think that talking about the war on women and war on women's health care, reproductive rights, it's, if we want access to contraceptives, that is not just a women's issue. Men should be just as involved. All people should be just as involved in making sure that all people have access to contraception and abortion access, because it impacts them too.
Well, what about the role? I know we were talking about women's reproductive rights and things like, and just women's health in general, and the abortion poverty and things. But what happens when we move to the workplace? So, for instance, we have a woman who's a CEO over Yahoo, or when they're in these positions, and women are moving, higher up, and when you get to the executive levels, the executive C levels. So, when we talk about feminism in that regard, people are saying that, well, women have a higher place in society now. I mean, for a while, women stayed at home. They took care of the family. There was this, they took care of all the domestic activities around the house. But now they're in the workplace. And not only are they in the workplace, but they're actually moving up in the workplace. So do we see that there's still an issue there?
Absolutely. I mean, because the problem is women are still doing all the domestic work and moving up in the workplace. And then they're also making less money than the men do when they get those CEO level positions. And so it's like, you can hire a woman for cheap, and she's going to work 2 jobs and handle everything and take all the blame too. And so, when you look at just in the media how female CEOs and female executives get criticized, things that men do are, just the learning curve, or the good old boy network, or, well, he's one of my friends, so I'll give him a chance. Mm-hmm. And women don't really get chances. Women have to do it right the first time, and they have to be perfect, and they can't make mistakes, and they can't ask for help because then they're not enough of a leader. I mean, just, all these things that weigh on women day to day, it just shows that we're really not there yet. I mean, the women who are CEOs and who are at that executive level are superheroes. Like the average woman can't do that. It's just not possible to get it all done.
Well, also to go off of that, right now with so many young people, especially relevant for my life, going, graduating from college and, looking for entry-level work, the amount of debt that we're going to have is it's mind-boggling, the trillions of dollars of debt just from student loan debt. And so women entering this level, they're going to get hired, but they're also going to be paid less. So that's going to have a huge impact on, economically on how women and their families are going to be able to start off. Young people aren't buying homes, young people are, waiting longer to get married. And a lot of that has to do with just how, just for young people in general, how difficult it is. But for women especially, it's going to be very hard because, in Texas, we don't have an equal pay for equal work legislation, and our current governor, he vetoed it, and the one who next guy who wants to be governor, Greg Abbott, also has promised he'd veto it. So it's another issue. It's tied to our economic well-being almost for the rest of our lives.
Well, so I'm sorry, I thought I had a call. I was like, oh, there's a call. Wait, I think there is a call. Looks like we have a caller. Caller, what's your comment or question?
Hey, I'd just like to commend the program and this panel for discussing such an important topic to me as a woman and as a feminist, and also for attempting to educate the public on this topic. This is what primetime TV on Thursday should be about. I know that's scandalous for me to say so, but it's the truth. But with that said, I know a lot of the discussion tonight has been generally what the feminist movement is about, and that is championing the rights of women and being a voice for women's rights and equality of women. But I know also that the feminist movement, and I think somebody said something about that earlier, is about how we can affect change, and with regard to the differences between men and women and how those differences are viewed. So my question to the panel is, in your opinion, what is the root of inequality between men and women, and how can we, not just as feminists, but as society in general, combat that or change that?
Well, thank you for your question.
It's a good question. It's a big question.
Yeah, I was like, deep on it.
It's a big question.
Well, I mean, the beginning of time could.
Or just gender. Just the way that we're assigned gender, pink and blue from the crib, and, girl toys, boy toys. It's just indoctrinated.
It's from birth, right? Like
yeah.
You're well, from my experience, I can't speak from historical perspective, but we're conditioned to play certain roles in society. I can't identify the root causes of when I've witnessed sexism, but I can say that I don't know many men who, I would like to think that I don't know many men who are intentionally sexist. I think they're just behaving in a way that they believe they're supposed to behave in today's society.
There's this great book called Illusions of Gender by Cordelia Fine, and in it, one of the studies she talks about is that, I don't remember how the study was done, but basically the findings were that by age 2, boys and girls already have this idea of what gender is and like what a girl is supposed to be, what a boy is supposed to be, and they're able to list off things, oh, girls are, nice and they wear dresses and they are fragile or something, so to that effect. And, men or boys are strong or they're aggressive or they like cars and trucks. And at such an early age, they already have this idea of what gender is. And that has so many implications about, that's just for gender, what they view gender as. So it's alarming at how much we inundate them with at home or when they go to preschool and then just going on from there, how you have to stick to that because there's these social rules and you don't want to break them.
And I think also as early as the age of 2, girls and boys understand the differential value of girls and boys, and characteristics that are associated with girls are seen as less valuable and less important than characteristics associated with boys. That's pretty amazing that at such a young age, girls and boys get that message about how boys are kind of inferior. There's also been research studies that find that if you just arbitrarily assign objects a gender that don't have a gender, so you're basically making stuff up like that's for boys, that's for girls, those arbitrary objects take on more value if they're just labeled for boys and men compared to girls and women.
It seems fairly automatic at this point. Women are asked more, how do you handle your job and your kids? What men are asked that? I would like for someone to ask my father that. And Michelle Obama was arguably, before he was President Obama was president, was more accomplished than Barack. But now she's degraded, or not degraded, but she's reduced to what she's wearing and whether she's doing enough. I think no one seems to have an issue with these things. Like, the media just reports these things as if like it's just something we're supposed to be doing, something we're supposed to be talking about. Yeah.
Even when I created the flyer to talk about the show, I was typing in feminism, trying to come up with pictures, and you know what it came up with? The picture we have. And you all may not know, but the picture, when I had a flyer, it just shows a woman in the center, and then her her juggling like a frying pan and a book, and her account statements or something like that. So even just trying to find something, it's just what people see is how people view women or feminism, and how you put it all in this one kind of love category.
So I'm in this class, and we always go about, I don't know if you're allowed to say this word on TV, like pisses, like what pisses me off.
Yeah.
And so what pisses me off is like these commercials all the time, and ever since we were young, we're seeing like women are cleaning, women are using the broom or the vacuum cleaner or that sweeper little thing. Mm-hmm. Women are primary roles in that, and then men are always like for insurance companies or this very dominant force or whatever. It's infuriating to see that, because I actually like to be one of those people who are cleaning. And I never see my representation on there. But no, it's...
I don't like it. At all.
But it's just so freaking natural. And I thought I was always odd, because I was always the one that noticed it. But
Or also in media, women are portrayed in like very, I don't watch the Super Bowl for other reasons. I'm not a big football fan, but I can't stand the commercials that come on during the Super Bowl because they're so sexist and degrading. There's an image of a woman trying to eat a hot dog, and you're just like, okay, we get it. Can we move on now? Can we be adults? Can we not, put all this hypersexualized images of women constantly plastered everywhere? And so it is degrading, or the female form is infantilized. It's hypersexualized. A lot of these images are very violent. It's like women's bodies are cut up. Mm-hmm. They're plastered onto objects. So you're not a woman, you're an object. You're not a person. And so I think that goes back to the idea of women. Can women have it all? Are women people? It's like, yes. We don't compartmentalize everyone else this way, but we do with women, and it's very bizarre.
And it starts with little girls. I mean, if you think about, it's always, does she look pretty? Is she wearing a dress? Or, God forbid a little girl be overweight. And it's like, you know. But if a little boy's overweight, he's a bruiser and he's tough and he's strong. But if a girl takes up too much space, it's a problem. You know, it's like girls should be in their boxes.
Right. I think we have another caller. Caller, what's your question or your comment?
Hello, this is an interesting show.
Hello. Thanks for calling in.
Yes, is feminism more about anti-feminist or uplifting what women are accomplishing every day right now? And I'll hang up. Thank you.
I didn't really understand.
More about is it more
So it's
about?
more about anti-feminist, or is it about the roles that women are playing now, like the role of women now? That's what it sounds like. Is feminism? I don't want to speak for the caller, but it sounds like the caller you're asking is feminism about people that don't agree with feminism? That's what it sounds like.
Sometimes, actually, I feel like a lot of it is fighting sort of an uphill battle against all these misconceptions and all this stuff. And so, I mean, if I want to characterize our society this way, I mean, I could. It is very anti-feminist in a lot of ways, and I think that's why we feel the need to have a strong feminist movement. But I'm not 100% sure if that's what he was referring to.
All right. Well, I think we may have another caller. Let me check. Nope. All right. And we're moving on. So,
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I've been dying.
Go ahead.
Is Beyonce a feminist?
Yes. Yes. Carliss. Yes. Well, you know, first, I think anyone who defines himself as a feminist is a feminist. And the people who feel Beyonce is not a feminist, it's because of what she's choosing to wear, or how she's choosing to portray herself, or how she's choosing to, you know, characterize her marriage and her family. And that's what feminism is. It's the ability to choose what you wear, choose what you do, to sexualize yourself if you want to be sexual, to wear the clothes that you want to wear, to be a mom if you want to be a mom. I mean, like, you know, that's the ultimate feminist, in my opinion. I don't, every time I see a woman who is a sex worker or a pop star, I don't automatically think she's being oppressed. It's all about whether or not she made that choice.
The only thing I really heard against her being a feminist that I thought was amusing and, you know, maybe had some grain, I took it with a grain of salt, but I thought it was probably a pretty good argument, was that, you know, because she's taking part in this capitalist, you know, capitalist society, you know, she's making a lot of her money and she's using a lot of that. It was for her own benefit, obviously, but she's working very hard. But that's, I wasn't sure if it was entirely, I don't know if anyone else has heard this argument or not, but I got that just basic gist of it, and I thought that was interesting.
That she's a feminist for profit?
You know, yeah, in a lot of ways, she's just making a profit off of it, yeah.
I don't question her being a feminist, because I agree that, you know, anyone who proclaims themselves a feminist should have that right. But the objectification of women is so pervasive, and I kind of think that Beyonce contributes to that. And that's the only thing that caught me off guard when she did start proclaiming herself as a feminist, because she is one of the most sexually objectified female in our society right now. And she willingly does that. But I question, is she doing it for the, you know, pleasure of men, or is she doing it for, you know, the right to be sexually liberated?
I mean, she can do both if she wants to.
I think that goes back to Carliss's point. You know, it's her choice. She gets to do all of this. So, however she would stand up there. Because I think, listening to that and your point and what you were saying earlier, Laila, is that, you know, when you're talking about women being objectified, women being not treated as human, but then it seems like we as women look to that, because it's like, this is what we see. This is what, you know, the media is telling us. The media is telling us this is the way women should be looking. This is the way that we should be dressing. And so we're looking at this. And then when we dress like that, or if we go ahead and do these things and then something happens, we still get, you know, kind of inundated with issues. Like if something happens, if God forbid a woman gets sexually assaulted, raped, or something like that, then we go into this whole victim blaming episode. So then, for instance, the Jerry Rice and his wife,
Janae Rice.
Janae Rice. And so when what happened, you know, obviously we saw, you know, people saw what happened. I didn't see the video, but people saw what happened to her. And then what ended up happening, there was this whole Twitter storm about her staying there and why she stays. But then if she would have left or said something against him, there would have been an issue that she was kind of bashing him. So it seems like with women and with feminism, you're having a struggle at both ends. If you don't do anything about it, then you know you're not standing up for yourself. But if you do something about it and you say something about it, then you're still being kind of shamed. So I guess burning the candle.
It all seems to be about whether women are doing what people want them to do or what they choose to do. And you know, and people seem to have a problem with women taking advantage of the fact that we do live in a sexist society and profiting on it. It's like if a man were profiting from Beyonce, it would be okay. Nobody said anything when it was her father managing her. But now that she's managing herself, and when she sexualizes herself, she makes all the money, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, why is she still doing that? And now that she's choosing to do something for herself, why isn't she more dowdy, or why is she so, you know, flashy? You know, the same thing with the Rice situation. You know, she made the decision she made for her family. It's not a decision I would make. But, you know, you have feminists or people who want her to leave and feel like she should have left. And then you have people who are blaming her for ruining his career. You know, the poor girl can't win, and she's just doing what's best for her. And I think part of the feminist movement is the ability to do what is best for you in any given moment and not have this criticism. You know, people don't criticize men this way at all.
Yeah, also a choice is that a lot of women are, when they do make a choice, it's do they really have that choice? Was it really a choice that they made? So just a basic example of a woman wearing a headscarf or a woman wearing a bikini. Like, oh, are they depending on what culture they you know were raised in, are they making that choice because it was really their choice, or are they making that choice because they were raised to think that that was the best choice for them? And so it's even when we do make our own decisions, we're reduced. We're not taken seriously. It's not really we're not given credit for having the ability, the intellectual capacity to make our own decisions.
So is there a problem like I saw on Fox News for just a moment? I don't stay there. I do not stay there on Fox News. But for a moment, yeah, there was a woman who was talking about that. See, I don't know her name. I didn't say that long, but there was a woman talking about how you should go to college. Like, women should be in college, and that's great, but they should be in college to find a man. That they should be there. That they should go there to find a man. And I know that was kind of a mentality back in the day, but I was going with this for a reason. No, yeah. So you should be in college to find a man, and that this should be a choice. So if a woman is going to college to do this, to find a man so that this man can take care of her and all of that, can she still proclaim being a feminist?
He'd have to be a pretty rich man right now. What else do you know? Right. I don't know that someone in college with you could afford to support you. But, I mean, I guess that is a choice. I mean, it's not a choice I would make, but I think the idea that you know what life you want and that you are seeking the path that you want, I don't think that should be taken away from women. I don't think, you know, if a woman if a woman were to put on her college application, I'm going to college to find a man, if she's qualified to be there, she should still be allowed to be there. So
I think that's really unrealistic given the structure currently of our economy, that women are going to be in the workplace kind of no matter what. There's actually, in 2014, there's actually more women in the workplace than there are men in the workplace. So that's just not a realistic, I mean, that's silly to talk in those terms, given the nature of the economy. That's not a luxury that it's not a luxury that working class women and poor women and women of color ever had, but now that's starting to creep up into middle class women, and they better be prepared to work 40 hours or
and
more a
aren't there
week.
more women in college than men now? So, I mean, your odds aren't great.
So there's 50, I just happened to look up these numbers. I'm not a walking encyclopedia. So 57% of college students are women. So there's a slight majority, but it's not what a lot of people claim it to be, that women are just kind of taking over the university and leaving men behind, but they are a slight majority.
If women are smarter, then get that happen.
Well, I think we have about a minute left, and so I just wanted to ask if there was someone out there today who's wanting to join the movement, what is something that you would tell them? Start with you.
Well, if you're a college student and you go to the University of Houston, come to our feminist organization meetings. I would say just read. We have wonderful resources online for feminists. And there's a lot of great ways to be involved. I mean, like you were saying about the hashtag, on Twitter with the Janae Rice conversation was why I stayed and why I left, women talking about their choices that they make. So, just wanting to understand more about specific issues or just prominent figures, there's going to be a ton of information at your disposal to learn more about it.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Speak up.
Good advice.
Yeah, speak up and be involved.
Don't be scared to be corrected. I've been corrected several times, especially during my college years. And it's always been very insightful and enlightening.
Take women's studies courses. Take gender studies courses.
All right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and begin our wrap up. But one of the things I would like to say is just thank you for this. Thank you for coming on the show and talking about this. I know that we've been talking about, here in Texas, we've really been talking about women and talking about women's rights. And then after the NFL, what happened with the Rice family. And so it's good to know that we're able to talk about feminism and show what feminism is about and where women are standing, that it really is about lifting women up. So I just thank you all. I thank you callers for calling in and being a part of the conversation. And I just am just pleased with this conversation, and I hope that we'll get to continue it. So with that, I'll just say good night and thanks again.
Thanks
you
for
watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.